All right, so ready to dive into some ancient wisdom.
Always up for that.
Awesome. Today we're looking at Ecclesiastes.
Oh, Ecclesiastes. It's a good one.
Yeah, it's been on my mind lately. It's a bit of a head scratcher, honestly.
I can see why.
Yeah, I mean, you've got King Solomon, right? The guy had it all.
Hmm.
Wealth, power, you name it. And yet,
And yet.
the book kicks off with vanity of vanities, all is vanity. Like, what? Why would someone who seemingly had everything declare it all meaningless?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? That's the paradox at the heart of Ecclesiastes. And I think that's why it still resonates with people today, thousands of years later.
Thousands of years, yeah. But I got to admit, vanity, when I hear that word, I think, looks superficial stuff.
Right, and it's easy to go there. But in Ecclesiastes, vanity has a much deeper meaning. It's about the fleeting nature of everything we chase after in this world, all the stuff we think will bring us happiness.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. Solomon was a king. Even he realized that power and possessions don't ultimately satisfy.
Exactly. And the book really drives that point home. I mean, think about how it talks about generations coming and going, empires rising and falling, even great accomplishments being forgotten over time.
It really puts things in perspective, doesn't it? It makes you wonder, I mean, if everything is ultimately fleeting, if it's all going to fade away, then what truly matters? Like, is this whole book just one giant existential crisis?
Well, some might read it that way, but I don't think Ecclesiastes is nihilistic. It's not about giving up on life. It's more about shifting our focus. It's about recognizing that, yes, life is impermanent, but then asking, okay, so how do we find meaning in the midst of that?
Okay, so how do we do that? What's the answer? What's Ecclesiastes telling us?
Well, remember those passages about simple pleasures, like enjoying a good meal with friends, or finding satisfaction in honest work.
Yeah, I remember those.
Ecclesiastes doesn't dismiss those things as meaningless. Instead, it highlights them. It reminds us to find joy in the everyday, to appreciate the present moment.
That's so interesting because, it makes me think about when I was a kid. We didn't have much, but some of my happiest memories are the simple things. Like just sitting around the table with my family, sharing stories, laughing. We weren't chasing after anything big or fancy, but those were truly happy times.
Exactly. And, I think that's a message that feels especially relevant today. I mean, in our modern world, we're constantly bombarded with messages about achievement, about material success. It's easy to get caught up in that, to feel like we're always striving for something more.
Always striving, yeah. Always feeling like we're not enough.
Right. And so Ecclesiastes makes us wonder, are we chasing the wind, just like the people who came before us?
Chasing the wind. I like that. It's a powerful image. It really makes you think about what you're spending your time on, what you're prioritizing. And it begs the question, if you knew you had limited time, what would you do differently?
And that's the question Ecclesiastes poses to each of us, isn't it? What would you change? How would you live your life differently if you knew your time was precious and finite? What relationships would you nurture? What experiences would you seek out?
Whoa. That's deep. That's a lot to unpack. I mean, it's pretty amazing, right, how an ancient book like this can still spark such deep introspection, even today.
I know. It speaks to those timeless fundamental questions, doesn't it? The search for meaning, the desire for a life well lived.
Yeah. So as we wrap up this dive into Ecclesiastes, I think I'm left with this question. What wind am I chasing? What am I missing out on because I'm so focused on chasing after things that might not ultimately matter?
That's a great question, and maybe that's the invitation of Ecclesiastes, to pause, to reflect, and to make sure we're not just chasing fleeting vanities, but truly embracing the simple joys that give life meaning.
Yeah, to savor those simple joys.
Absolutely.
Thanks for diving into this with me. It's given me a lot to think about.
Anytime. Always happy to explore these big questions.
To be continued, I guess.
Always is.